on all this?
So, like I said, I give him top 3. I give him top 3 if he wins Super Bowl. I'm not putting him over Joe as of yet.
You ain't doing that. What does he have to do to go over Joe, in your opinion? Because if he wins with this is a pretty.
If he wins one more, I put him over Joe. But I'm not putting him over Joe as of yet, because the thing is, I'm taking into consideration those defenses that Joe Montana played in his own division. Any of y'all ever heard of the Dome Patrol? He had faced them twice a year. So, I mean, not to mention, you had to face Lawrence Taylor in the playoffs. You had to face the Philadelphia Eagles back when they had Richard White in the playoffs. You had to face the 85 Bears and some of those great Bears defenses, because they just didn't stop at 85. That's just the team that won the Super Bowl. I remember one year they had 77 sacks, and then the Minnesota Vikings had a great defense during that time. So I cannot put him over Joe Montana after. And then he won. Peep this. Then he won before he even had Jerry Rice. Can anybody on this panel tell me who Freddie Solomon is?
Hell no. I'm gonna be honest with you. Hell no.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the 85 Bears, because actually, if you look back at the stats, everyone considers the 85 Bears to be the greatest defense of all time.
That's facts, bro.
Statistically, the 86 Bears were
they were better than them. They had 77 sacks. They still a record still to this day.
Damn, they had 77 sacks.
So you're taking in consideration that Joe had to play much harder defense, is what you're saying.
Much harder defense, and like I said, much harder defense.
Champ. How many? What was that defense last year in Philadelphia? What were they considered? Man, they were just terrorists, the quarterbacks, right?
Hilarious.
How many Super Bowls or how many sacks they get last year?
70 sacks.
So how many did they get in the Super Bowl? That's right. It's goose egg. So and also a couple years before that, we played this team called the 49ers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And their whole entire roster was better than the Chiefs. Same with the Philadelphia Eagles. Hell, if we want to be real, you go back and watch how he played against the Buccaneers with, mind you, not a single starting offensive lineman from week 17. Not one. He was hitting people in the face mask from 30 yards away while throwing horizontal. It is the single greatest throw in NFL history. I have never seen a guy go airborne, throw a ball at a horizontal, and hit a guy in the face mask.
I would talk to it.
Now, he dropped it. I don't know how. But there's no one else besides maybe Aaron Rodgers doing that.
Again, like I said, I'm not putting him over Joe Montana, not just because of the sacks numbers and that they had back in the 80s, but if you look on those teams and those defenses have an average of 4 Hall of Famers on each one of those defenses. An average of 4 Hall of Famers.
An average.
Okay, so when you think
everybody makes the Hall of Fame nowadays. How many Hall of Famers? Wait, how many Hall of Famers were on that San Francisco team? How many Hall of Famers on that San Francisco team? No.
On the first 2 San Francisco teams?
Yeah.
The first 2 he won without Jerry Rice?
Yep.
It was just Montana and Lott.
Okay.
Go look it up. 2 Hall of Famers on that team.
Wait, I could be wrong, but wasn't Charles Haley on that team?
No, Charles Haley didn't come to 87.
87, got it.
Because I remember the draft class of 86, they said it was the worst of all time. John Taylor got drafted during that draft. Kevin Fagan got drafted during that draft.
That was
one of the best drafts in history. And none of them went in the first round. So wait a minute. They take that back. They had one more Hall of Famers on those first 2 teams. It was Ronnie Lott, Fred Dean, and Joe Montana. Other than that, no Hall of Famers, but those 3 on those first team. When you look on that 85 Bears team, 4 Hall of Famers, and you think about it, they're some of the best of all time. Richard Dent, one of the greatest defensive ends of all time. When you think about Mike Singletary, one of the best linebackers of all time. When you think about Wilbur Marshall, one of the best blitzing linebackers of all time. When you think about Dan Hampton and Steve Mongo McMichael, wait a minute, I misunderestimated that. That's 5 Hall of Famers. 2 of the best defensive tackles of all time. What defense do you know these days can go up against that and still win? And then after that, then the week before that, you beat the Giants with who? Lawrence Taylor, Harry Carson, Leonard Marshall, just to name a few. Because people always want to talk about Lawrence Taylor on that New York Giants team back in the 80s. Because they forgot to mention Harry Carson was one of the greatest goal line linebackers of all time.
That's true.
I never see
champs
snap like this.
When we talk about defenses that some of these guys are facing right now, nowadays, I don't want to hear it. You're not facing Reggie White every week. You're not facing Seth Joyner every week. You're not facing Jerome Brown every week. You're not facing those guys. So let's take these guys, these defenses that these guys are facing. They didn't let just anybody in the Hall of Fame back then. Matter of fact, you couldn't even make the Pro Bowl unless players and coaches voted on it. So those defenses that Patrick Mahomes played,
that back, by the way.
So those defenses that Patrick Mahomes played, I would love to see him play against Seth Joyner and Gang Green. Those Buddy Ryan defenses that Joe Montana had to play in the early 90s. I would love to see that. Because guess what? Joe Montana got sacked 11 times in a game and still won.
Bro, if Mahomes was doing what he was doing back in the 80s, bro, they'd arrest him for witchcraft. They arrest him for witchcraft.
He got sacked 10 times by Gang Green, one of the most dominant defenses in history, and still won the game and went to the Super Bowl.
Okay, and look, if you want to put Joe Montana up there, that's fine. But the only argument that I refuse to hear is that, in order for Mahomes to be ahead of Brady, he has to have the same amount of rings or more. Because if you're going to go that route, I don't know if I'm not saying that you're saying that, but if you're going to go that route, you're going to die on some very stupid hills. Well, I mean we're going to sit here and we're going to be talking about Eli Manning be top 10 all time.
Hey, brother, a lot of people were down some stupid hills because before Tom Brady had 7 rings, Otto Graham went to 10 championships in a row. Is anybody putting him in their top 10? Anybody in modern day history? Hell no.
Bro, and nobody in black and white making the top 10. What we talking about?
They played, Otto Graham played 10 straight championships and won 7 of them. He won 7 championships before Brady. Didn't nobody put him in the top 10 or the top 5. So
the same thing with Bill Russell.
If you died on the heels of a championship, then guess what? You died on a lot of bad
teams. Nah, I don't know about that Bill Russell thing.
I have Bill Russell top 5.
So this is not basketball, it's football. So guess what?
I said.
If you dine on the heel of just championships alone, Otto Graham should be the greatest quarterback of all time because he won with Paul Brown, one of the original dynasties.
It wasn't the Super Bowl. They were only playing half a league.
They were only playing
Let's
half
be real.
But like I said, if you're gonna down the heels of championships, then guess what? Otto Graham is the second greatest quarterback of all time. But unfortunately, he wasn't.
And if that's the case, then Eli Manning's better than Dan Marino. And if you really believe that, then you shouldn't even be here.
I believe that.
I mean, now let me
well, Jay, that's not surprising.
Relax.
When you son Tom Brady twice, I mean, shit. Now let me stop. Let me relax.
But yeah, man. I mean, like I said, Joe Montana with those defenses, and like I said, like I said, man, he had competition at his own job. People don't even realize, man. Steve Young and Steve Bono were Pro Bowlers, and they were yipping at his heels after he had got injured. So, and those teams back then, they just as talented as you are. In the 80s, the NFC did not lose a Super Bowl after the Oakland Raiders won in 1983. Matter of fact, they won 13 straight years. The NFC won 13 straight years in a row after the Los Angeles Raiders did in 1983. So back then, the NFC was no joke, not like right now. So, hey, and who was killing all those defenses? Joe Montana. So, I mean, hey, we can talk about all this stuff about Patty Mahomes, and I like Patrick Mahomes, but let's not have recency biasness. Let's give credit where credit is due. Now, this is arguably the hardest journey that he has to win a Super Bowl, arguably the hardest, especially the defense that he faced, especially facing Josh Allen this week. The team he faced last week, and if he beats the Triple Crown champions on defense and the MVP, that's the hardest role arguably anybody's ever had. Arguably.
That's true.
So,
all right, y'all.
If he wins that, yes, he's up there, top 3. I give it to him. I'm not going to put him over Brady and Montana, though.
Man, Brandon's top 2. That's all I know, man.
And he's not 2.